We are really fortunate to have Jennifer Williams with us today from Austin Bergstrom International Airport. Jennifer is going to be speaking with us about the airport and the role it plays in regional transportation and wider regional economic and land development. Jennifer has a very distinguished and fast-moving career. She studied civil engineering at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, and she worked for the City of Charlotte Transportation Department as an engineer and worked reviewing land development plans and analyzing future transportation needs. She did that for a while, and in 2012 moved here to Austin to take a job with Austin Bergstrom. She's been there since. She started her career there managing projects with roadway development, stormwater projects, and public-private partnerships. And she has since become the planning and development supervisor. And so she manages a team of architects, engineers, and planners. And she's also managing the larger 2040 master plan for the airport. So join me in welcoming Jennifer and in thanking her somewhat in advance, both for her talk, but also for hosting some of us next week.
That's right.
When our graduate transportation planning class comes to the airport as part of our larger Transportation Quest field trip, generously funded by the CM2 right here on campus. So thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. Well, as she mentioned, Jennifer Williams, my background is in transportation engineering under that civil umbrella. So I did do no roadway design. I just skipped and went ahead to really reviewing other people's drawings, submitting them for permitting. Which was something I absolutely loved to do, but got yelled at every day by developers. So that was always fun. But now at the airport, I have a very fast-paced airport. We're one of the fastest growing in the country. I'll get into that in a minute in the slides, but really just want to give you guys some background on what we do out there and what our impact is to the community, what projects we have coming up. So a lot of people just think it's the airport. You land planes. We like to say we're a construction site that lands planes. It's always under construction. We don't see that changing anytime in the future. So we'll just get into some of this. I'll also talk about the business models of the airlines and how that plays a role into the decision making that we do. We are a city department, but we're an enterprise fund. So all of the money that is made at the airport has to stay at the airport. That's a federal law. So we don't use taxpayer dollars to support the airport. The only thing we get from you is that measly $8 fee at the bottom of your ticket, your airline ticket. So our facilities, we've got 2 widely spaced runways that allow us to do simultaneous landings and departures on both of those. We now have 34 gates at the terminal. A car rental facility that would just open in 2015. We have 2 hotels with space for another one. We have the National Guard on site. We have 2 FBOs and another one that's being built right now that's fixed-based operators. It's our general aviation, the small guys. They're down on the south side. And then the South Terminal, which is our ultra-low-cost terminal, and I'll get into why that one's just a little bit different. But we're on 4,200 acres. And what does that really mean? What is our impact? We're at $7.6 billion impact in the Texas region. That's just the airport, and it increased by 212% since the last time they did that study in 2010, which was really exciting for us to see those numbers come out late last year. We impact about 74,000 jobs around Central Texas, and last year we had over 2,000 construction jobs at the airport. That doesn't include just running the thing. So it's been quite an endeavor to open those 9 gates. That's one project of, I think I have 109 active construction projects going on right now at the airport. So what does our growth look like and how does it correspond to Austin's population growth? So Austin's grown, doubled in size every 20 years. So as far back as you can really look at, the airport's done the same thing. We're on that same trend in regards to the population of Austin and really having that towards. So when we look at what the city's anticipated growth is, we're kind of looking at that from our standpoint, but we're seeing it in our own numbers. So we're pulling our own data for passenger growth. We look at passenger growth differently than we do our airside operations, as well as our traffic counts on the roadway system. All three of those grow at a different rate, and I'll let you know why in a minute. This is our service area. So while we are a City of Austin department, we're a regional airport, and we are the Central Texas airport of choice. We actually serve over 21 counties in the region. So we serve all the way up to Waco and down south past San Antonio. Now that we have quite a few nonstops internationally, a lot of folks from San Antonio are now flying up, are driving up and flying out of Austin. So we're seeing that in our comparison to their growth down there. So we know that that's happening. But why are people doing that and why can we serve that much area is because we're very well located within the Golden Triangle. So you have San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas, and we kind of sit a little bit north of San Antonio. So we have a bigger catchment area than they do when it comes to passengers. So we're just seated in a really, really good location to even serve all those counties around us. Our nonstop destinations, this slide seems to change every day, so I don't even know if it's up to date right now, but we get new nonstops every day. Some drop off. Just kind of depends on what the need is out there. And then the business models. So this is an interesting slide because maybe 10 years ago, if you guys were flying, you used to fly these small 50-seater regional jets out of Austin, out of Dallas, out of Love Field. Those are pretty much gone. You don't really sit on a 50-seater regional jet anymore. Those are RJs. You're really sitting on a 150-passenger plane now, 737 and larger. And that's why the airlines are now making money. They were not making money 10 years ago when they had the hub and spoke business model where you would hub at a specific location. The airlines would hub at a specific location and then just do these small regional jets to all of these places that were maybe 2 hours away from the airport or an hour away from the airport. And then people would hub to that and then go somewhere else. They flipped that business model and said, why are we putting all this money into moving 50 people when we think they'll drive if we take the flight away? And so that's what happened. A lot of folks now, those smaller airports are really hurting because the airlines are pulling out of there, knowing that if they pulled out, that somebody would just make the hour drive to Austin or make the hour drive. Greenville, South Carolina, and Charlotte's a really good example. Charlotte's a huge hub for American. It's 92% of their flights are American Airlines. And you've got Greenville, South Carolina, that's maybe like an hour and a half away, 2 hours away. Well, they're pulled a lot of those flights out of there, and now people are just driving to Charlotte. So they're putting it on the passenger instead of wasting all of that money on these hub and spoke options. The other thing that they've done is you still have your legacy carriers in regards to American, United, and Delta. They still function like they used to. They're getting a little smarter because the ultra low-cost carriers like Allegiant and Frontier are gaining momentum and really disrupting the industry. Those low-cost flights, what we're really seeing is the millennials are coming in and saying, I don't want to spend money on the plane. I want to spend money when I get off the plane and where I'm at. I don't care about all of the stuff on the plane. I don't care about the free drinks and the peanuts and all that stuff. I really rather spend my money later. The business passengers still love those legacy carriers, but the ultra low-cost carriers are really dominating the market right now, which is why you're seeing United and American, or United and Delta, doing economy seats where now you get charged for your carry-on. And so they're trying to add into the game with putting a lower seat ticket, but they can't compete with those ultra low cost carriers and the flights that they have. So what did we do? We knew there was a disruption coming, so we actually built a low-cost carrier terminal down on the south side of the airport. It's the South Terminal. You actually get to that off of Burleson Road, not from the main terminal. There's parking down there. That's where Allegiant and Frontier fly out of right now. And so you get on 183 and get off at Burleson and then take Emma Browning to get to the South Terminal. So what is it? It's 30,000 square feet. It was a P3, which is a public-private partnership. So the airport actually doesn't own and maintain that building. There's a private company that came in, wanted to build the South Terminal. It's the only one in the country. And they actually started with Puerto Rico, and they bought Puerto Rico's airport, and it's a private airport in San Juan. And so they came to Austin, wanted to do this. It was a huge relief for us because we were growing so fast. We didn't know where we could put more gates. So it helped us out a lot by doing this. And now if you look at contracts that are being made with airlines and other cities, there's an Austin clause. Because one of the things we did was the landing fee at the main terminal is about $7. But the landing fee at the South Terminal is about $3. That's why those ultra low cost carriers can really give you a more competitive ticket price. And so the airlines hated that we did that. We were the first one. And so now if anybody else does anything, or they have multiple terminals, Chicago, Atlanta, there's an Austin clause in there that you can't charge different landing fees for different terminals, because obviously the legacy carriers don't like that the low-cost guys are getting a smaller fee. However, they're not getting the amenities that you get at the main terminal, which is what our interest was in really trying to lower that price to get those airlines in here. So what's our growth rate? Over the last 37 years, we've grown at 6%, which is huge. The average growth for an airport is about 2.3, 2.4%. Put that into relative terms. So last year, we ended at 15.8 million annual passengers. So we've got almost 16 million people going through our airport every year. And what will be be going to. So this is what we're going to grow up and be like. So we finished at almost 16 million in 2018. And when we did the 2040 master plan in 2037, the growth rate that was approved was 4.5%, which is that measly little yellow line there. So that's what FAA approved. So when you do a forecast for an airport, FAA has to approve it. But they only have a certain percentage increase that they'll approve over what they think you're going to grow at. So they think we're even lower than 4.5%. I have data that says I've grown at 6. So thank you, FAA, for giving me 4.5. And this will really show you what the difference is and how it's going to impact us in building infrastructure in the future. So if we do use FAA's growth rate, we would be at 31.4 million annual passengers. That's about the size of Salt Lake City. So it's almost double what we are today. But if what we think we're going to grow out is closer to an 8% forecast. The last 6 years, we've grown at 9%. Last year, we grew at 13.2. And so we'll be at 65 million annual passengers. That's the size of DFW. So that's a significant amount of infrastructure that Austin needs to put in place to be able to handle the growth that's coming. FAA approves this growth rate at a lower growth, mostly because they don't have the funding to support 8%. They don't want you to waste money that they're giving you. I'll get into the funding in a little bit and you really see how much impact their funding has for us. So existing projects, I'll run through these pretty quickly, but we just opened the 9-gate expansion. We actually increased the Barbara Jordan terminal from 11 million annual passengers to 15 million annual passengers, and we were so excited. But the day it opened, we were at 16.2. So we're already over capacity, which is why we did the 2040 plan, to really get us into what's next, and really as a backup of why construction's not going to stop at the airport. So this is just an overview of the 9-gate expansion. Those of you coming next week will see it in person, but we're getting a lot of the concessionaires finally open. My team's been working really hard on getting tenant spaces open to really support that end of the terminal. When you walk all the way down there and realize there's no food and you got to walk all the way back, it's not really a great experience. So we're working really hard to get those open. We have a parking and admin expansion, so we've built a 6,000 space garage. Parking's an interesting thing when we were going through the 2040 plan because of autonomous vehicles. How do they really plug into the scenario with the growth that we're having on the roadway, the land side, out at the airport, and how does that affect us? So from our revenue standpoint, our non-airline revenue, 60% of that is parking. So I hope all of you park at the airport to support us. But yes, so 60% of the airport's non-airline revenue is parking. So we're still building parking. In the 2040 plan, we had a conservative approach of autonomous vehicles not really coming into the mix, and then we do have a forecasted growth with adding them into what we did to really see when the trigger is going to be needed for another garage at some point. But as of right now, I don't see us building any new garages anytime soon because of how the autonomous vehicle, as well as the TNCs, Uber and Lyft, have a huge impact on the airport. I recently moved the TNCs into the garage. You can all blame me for that. And when we moved them over into the parking garage, it took 36% of the traffic off the curb and moved them into the parking garage. It was a significant impact. So now when you go pick up your loved one, you won't be waiting near as long. That's the positive. The consolidated maintenance facility, this is a huge campus that we're building with 9 different buildings. And it's really to capture all of our maintenance folks and putting them into one spot. They're right now down on the south side of the airport. And they're in some old Air Force buildings, so it's nice to get them out. Sure. We still capture revenue on any mode that comes to the airport. So if an Uber driver drops you off, they get charged $2 for drop off and pickup from the airport. They're using our roadway system and our infrastructure to make money as a business. And so that's where we can charge them for that. Cabs are the same way. Rental cars, we get a percentage of rental cars. So like I mentioned, we're a business. We operate it as a business. We don't really operate it as a city department because we have to make our own money and it has to stay there. So we have to be profitable. So we typically do look at all of those ways. The one thing that we don't get money off of is Cap Metro because we have a really good relationship with them. We just built that massive bus stop. That was actually one of my projects before I got my job now. And that was a super fun one to work on because we don't get to be that creative most of the time. And so that was really cool to really integrate in live timing and all of that with them on bus arrivals. But, you know, high capacity transit, I'll get to that in a minute. That's coming out to the airport. So there's potential ways of us seeing what that looks like. But yes, we do work with them. Cap Metro is a significantly reduced rate than you taking an Uber, which is a significantly reduced rate than if you park for multiple days at a time. So there's kind of those ways. We also look at it from an audience perspective. We have family-friendly valet for me who has an 18-month-old at home and a whole lot of crap that I have to fly with now. I'm like, yes, family-friendly valet, get all this stuff out. I don't have to get in a shuttle and with my child and then go up there and drop all this stuff off. So we look at what different audiences and what those needs are. And we really hear about all of those needs on Facebook. Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are our ones that we're really using social media to hear what the community wants. So feel free to definitely reach out to us on there. We're building a new info systems building too. This is an interesting project because we have a huge data facility that we can't move, and it has to remain operational, as you can imagine, at an airport that runs 24 hours a day. So we're going to be building a building on top of the data center that's there today and then integrating it into one structure. So it's going to be really interesting for us to do out there. And then the blue line, this is what I was talking about with Cap Metro. So we're working very closely with Cap Metro on even just the stops to downtown. We know if the last stop right now, they say, is going to be at the airport, we know where our passengers are coming from based off zip codes. And so we can really give that information to Cap Metro to make sure that they're capturing and providing stops along the way of where most of the percentage of people are going to be coming from. We also used a lot of our employee data. We pulled all of our employees, and really a lot of those folks do use Cap Metro to get to the airport, because if you're not a City of Austin employee, you're paying to park at the airport on top of your job. And so a lot of them are using Cap Metro to get to the airport. Our ridership is about 50% employees and 50% passengers. So that's pretty significant too. So we're working with them really closely to make sure that we get we capture our employees and making sure that they have the ability to get to the airport in a good way, using Cap Metro as well. So these are the segments that we've looked at. We're looking at how the blue line is going to connect to the orange line, because we have a very significant population in Pflugerville that typically actually takes 1:30 to get to the airport, and they're paying the toll every day. And so it's nice for them to be able to put a park and ride. We pulled the data of zip codes, went to Cap Metro and said, you guys got to move the end of that line like one more mile out for us to be able to capture a lot of those folks that could potentially be using it. So how does it come into the airport? That's one big thing we're looking at right now. The blue line and the red line there are two alignments that we've looked at. The green is actually relocating 71, which won't happen for quite a while. But that's one thing we have brought to the table with TxDOT for the last 15 years. They support us. They just don't have the money to pay for it. So now I'm talking to CTRMA, the Toll Road Authority. They're very interested in relocating 71 and providing toll, and then also free lanes to the airport and in between. Because what it'll do is actually connect the toll from 130 and 183 that's going to be finished pretty soon. So providing those connections for the Toll Road Authority and trying to partner with them on getting us better access into and out of the airport is really important for us. I would love to put in an actual interchange at Presidential and 71. However, it's so close to the approach of the runway that there's a height limitation of 88 feet. So I can't put in a traditional interchange at that intersection. The lights need to go. It takes forever to get out of the airport in the afternoon. And so this is one of the things we've been looking at. If I do relocate 71, the other thing I get to do is extend our existing runway on that side. It's 10,000 feet now. So if I can get it, or it's 9,000 feet now, if I can get it to 10,000, I can land that British Airways plane fully loaded. It can land there now, but it depends on the weight of the plane when they take off. Typically we land them on the long runway that's 12,500 feet, I believe. And then, and so we have this other one. So if I can extend to this one, I'll be able to land those large cargo planes on either runway, which would really help us out in the future on the airfield. So the master plan. This is the pretty picture of the airport layout plan. I mean, you guys have done community planning, a master plan, it's a pretty picture. Typically, you get a lot more detail into what's going in. This is what an airport master plan kind of looks like I said, this is the pretty picture of it. It's just boxes and where things are going. So it's really like a huge puzzle that we've put together in the future based on the forecast that was approved by FAA, and really figuring out where all of these things are going to go, relative, how do they work together, support services that need to impact that the airport's not in charge of. Those are always fun to work through with those tenants. So everything that's shown in color is going to be touched or going to be new. That's significant over the next 20 years. So terminal needs. So what are we really looking at from a terminal standpoint? These are just some of the random, more maintenance type projects that we have coming up. But what I really wanted to convey, we actually, when we do airport planning, we have an air side, we have a land side, and a terminal. And that's kind of how we break it out, mostly because the funding mechanisms are a little different for each of those. So on the terminal side of things, I need a lot more gates. I need more security, more TSA checkpoints. I need a new baggage handling system. And so all of that's going to go into this terminal. But I also have to think about, I have an existing 20-year-old terminal that is going to need to be upgraded in the future as well. So everything shown in orange here is new. The white building down the middle is the existing Barbara Jordan terminal. And then that big white block on the other side is the new 6,000 space garage and the Conrack facility. So where the orange terminal processor is on the screen, that's where the existing 3-story garage is today. So we're going to be demoing the garage and pushing the front of the Barbara Jordan terminal out so that your new front door is the Conrack facility, and you now have 6,000 spaces as your front door instead of a fun 900 spaces. So we'll be building a new curb as well as the new roadway going up to that for pickup and drop off. And then right now we have a bridge that will take you over to what would be potentially 32 new gates in a new midfield concourse. The bridge is still up in the air. One thing we're really looking at from a planning perspective is doing a cost-benefit analysis on it. So from an airport perspective, this was an Air Force base. So the ground isn't that great for us, and we never know what we're going to hit when we dig. We have hit the foundation of an old hospital before that we knew was there, but we thought they pulled out the footings. We hit the sidewalk. We're like, you guys didn't do anything. You just tore the building down and got out. And so from the bridge perspective, that's the pluses of doing the bridge. The other thing is we have a really high water table. And so we have to de-water a lot. So while you can build a tunnel under the Hudson River, it's quite expensive. So do we really want to do that here? But the flip side of that, I have a bridge, and I have 100-mile-an-hour straight line winds that come through the airport every now and then. Can the bridge that wide handle that? And is it going to be a heat box in the summer? Because it's going to be a glass bridge. So how much is it going to cost to air condition the thing? So when I'm going through all of this and really figuring out, yes, the bridge looks great. Not a lot of people are doing that. It's awesome. Let's do it. The views of downtown are going to be gorgeous. You have to look at it from a logistical standpoint too, as well from a maintenance standpoint. That's one thing that definitely gets overlooked when you're in the planning process. How am I going to run utilities across? Am I going to put them on the bottom of the bridge? Or am I going to build a tunnel for the utilities anyway? So why not dig it all out and put everything underground? So those are the things we're really looking at when we get into this. I'm an engineer, not an architect, so this is the architectural view of the new processor. And this is a cut view of what that's going to look like. So Paige did our renderings, and it was great for them to come in and really give us a good view of what the processor could potentially look like. So it's 3 stories. On the bottom floor is the baggage handling. The middle floor is security, and the top floor is ticketing. And so it's very similar to what we have now, but we just have the security and the ticketing on the same level. One of the things we really needed to look at from a transportation standpoint, and it's my background, so it's near and dear to my heart, is getting the pedestrians off the roadway when they're crossing. So if you're coming in and picking up a loved one, you're like, oh my God, these people are in my way. I don't even know where I'm going. Move. They won't be there in the future, which would be great. So we put 3 levels over on the curbside. So now we have a pedestrian realm that's in the middle. And so people won't actually be crossing across in traffic. So that's really going to help us from a safety perspective, really add a lot of capacity to the roadway system and the curb too. This is our nighttime view of everything. Airfield. So, like I said, we flipped them into 3 different categories. I'm going to be building a new apron, a new taxiways, relocating taxiways. And I have to build a whole lot of RON space. RONs remain overnight. That's where the planes sleep at night so that you get a wonderful 5 a.m. flight in the morning. And so everything in blue is new impervious area at the airport. That's a lot of blue. So when I'm talking to contractors, I'm like, hey, if you are in the concrete business, I got a job for you because that is a lot of concrete. We'll be building a new taxiway parallel to the old runway that we have. And then most of the blue that's in the middle is really there to support that new concourse. I have to relocate midfield taxiways to ensure the airfield stays operational and that it allows capacity. So landside, you know, I paid somebody $4 million to do the airport master plan. And when we got to the entrance of Presidential in 71, knowing that we couldn't put in an actual interchange, we were like, what can we do? I said, well, let's look at roundabouts on both sides of 71. Let's look at a Michigan U-turn. Let's look at a diverging interchange. So we went through all of this, and the concept we came up with is what we're calling a braided left. And it's actually something I came up with, which is really frustrating when you pay somebody $4 million to come up with a solution. So what you do here is actually the terminal's right here. You're going to be coming up. When you're leaving the terminal, you'll either take this bypass and go towards Bastrop, or you'll go underneath that bridge and then flip onto the other side of the traffic going under the bridge and free-flowing left to go downtown. So our problem is the lights, the signals. So we're trying to figure out how do we get rid of the signals. And so it's a half of like a divergent interchange, but without the signals. So up at Sam Bass and IKEA, they have that crazy one up there where you're flipping on the other side of the road. That's pretty much what we're going to be doing here. When you're coming in from Bastrop, you'll go under the wrong side of the road and then go over top of the exiting traffic and merge back in on Presidential. So we're excited to get this one going. We're starting a preliminary engineering report to really figure out the impact. We're going to be building a bridge of TxDOT's frontage road, and then on the north side of 71 is a city roadway, so we don't own that one. So it'll be fun to really kind of coordinate all of that too. So how do you actually program all of this and deliver it and all of that too? So that's in the planning stage as well. I've had to figure out how are we really going to program all of this? What's the schedule look like so that these guys can take this plan and then give it to the finance group to really get into the financial models of the airport and figure out what can we really afford to build. And so really trying to figure out how we're going to do this, what work packages are we going to solicit so that a lot of these different projects can be built in a timely manner. We're going to use all kinds of delivery methods as well, and that's really going to help us out. I kind of went over that. Funding. So this is always a fun one because it's a little different. These are our different funding mechanisms that we have. We have airport bonds. So the airport sells our own bonds. We're not part of the city bond program, which is why you don't vote on airport bonds because, like I said, we maintain and keep all of our money that we make out at the airport. PFCs is the passenger facility charge. That was that fee at the bottom of your airline ticket that I was talking about. The interesting thing with that is it takes us about 2 years to request that money from FAA. It's designated for your airport, but you have to go through all this paperwork and all of this stuff to actually get those funds released so that you can use them. AIP grants is FAA's grant program. That's the Airline Improvement Program, Airport Improvement Program. And to give you some reference, we typically get about $10 to $12 million from FAA every year to work on airside projects. So it has to be a taxiway or a runway project. We just built that 9-gate expansion with Apron, and that's the last project in the United States that will get grant funding for Apron work. We're the last one. They shut that down because their bucket's getting smaller and smaller. And so it's a $371 million project. We got $30 million from FAA. So it puts a very small dent in the infrastructure and the debt that the airport is getting to really build all of this. We have revenue on hand, and then other is really your P3s, so your public-private partnerships, and what that looks like in the future. You know, having other people pay for it. So if anybody's got a lot of money and you want to put your name on the terminal, you can come see me afterwards. But the cost center, so this is what we're really looking at, breaking it out. It's about a $4.2 billion program over the next 10 years is what we're looking at spending. We also get the question, and we kind of answered it in the master plan, San Antonio and Austin are so close. Why don't we just build one airport in between them, similar to DFW, and we'll knock it out, because San Antonio's airport is landlocked and they can't really grow anymore. And so we kept getting the question a lot. And so with the master plan, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would I pick up all this infrastructure that we just built and are building and move it an hour south near San Marcos, say? And so when we went back and really looked at it, we said on the 4,200 acres today that we have, what could we be? And we can get up to 60 to 70 million annual passengers. We're at 16, okay? That's exciting. So the other thing we looked at was, if I do build another 4th runway, it wouldn't necessarily be on the property we have today. We would have to buy a little bit going towards 130. We could handle 90 million annual passengers a year. And so that is the size of LAX. You're not really getting much bigger than LAX and Atlanta. So Atlanta's the largest in the world. So that kind of nixed the question, and they're like, well, I don't think there's a need to pick up the infrastructure and move it down. So we did finally hear that from San Antonio City Council, that they're just looking at what they have today and trying to plan their airport for growth on the land that they have today. So I think that's it. That's all I got. You guys have any questions? Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I went too far. I pushed too many. On the terminal side or the roadway one? The roadway. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oh, the pedestrian path. So, yes, we're spending $1.5 million on sidewalks. That's exciting. We didn't have any sidewalks out on campus before I started there 7 years ago, and I put together a sidewalk master plan, and everybody's like, nobody walks to the airport. That doesn't make any sense. Well, I also have 3,000 employees that work at the airport that would love to walk around and not really have to drive a vehicle from one building to another. And so that's what we did, was built sidewalk mostly for the employees. We are now seeing, I worked with TxDOT to put in the shared use path that they put in along 71. And now with the 183 Bergstrom Expressway, I worked with Downtown's Urban Trails group and with TxDOT, and they're putting in a shared use path. So you'll actually be able to walk or bike from downtown to the airport soon enough. So it was really exciting that we went ahead and made that initiative to put it in. We could get you from 71 to the terminal. And so now we're working on all these other pieces to get you in. So We have a bike trail that'll take you there. The 1.5 million here is really to put sidewalks on the south side of the airport now. Not a lot of people are going to use that, but there is a lot of FBO. The GAs are down there, general aviation folks, the towers down there, so FAA will be using it. And then I'm also fighting with Cat Metro, or working with Cat Metro, to try and get a bus line on Burleson so that folks using the South Terminal don't have to get on the shuttle to go to the main terminal, to get on the 100 to come downtown. And they're also looking at trying to put in a parallel path on 71 so that when the 71 traffic is so backed up that you could technically hop on a different line to get to Del Valley. And so that's something we're working on too. So this would really connect the sidewalk along Emma Browning to the South Terminal. So, yes.
So speaking of the South Terminal,
yeah. So they can do 11 flights a day out of that terminal. They're doing 4 or 5 right now. I've been in there when they've done 2 flights at one time, and it's crazy packed. And so they're set up to do 3 flights at one time, and I'm like, y'all are crazy. But, and it's hard because as a passenger, you think it's the airport. So when people complain about things, they're coming to us and saying, oh, I don't like what's going on. And we're like, well, we don't own and operate it. So we have to give it to them and really work in partnership on improvements that are needed down there. They really want to grow. When we got Spirit at the airport recently, we thought that they would go down there, but they have international, so they can't. The South Terminal doesn't have international capability. So that is one thing that they're looking at, is doing an expansion to add international capability so that they can get Spirit to move down there. And then just bring in more charter flights and stuff into the South Terminal. Because right now they all have to go in the main terminal to go through customs. And so it would really relieve us of that too. So it is a great partnership, but I do get frustrated with them sometimes too. Yes?
I'm just curious about like the airline's role in a lot of this. So like they obviously benefit when you guys are expanding and doing so many exciting things. Like do they have to pay, or like
Yeah. So the airlines pay for all improvements on the airfield and in the terminal. So that's the other reason why I need to do a cost benefit analysis on that bridge, because the first thing they're going to see with that is that's way too much money. We're cutting that, because they know they're going to end up paying for it. So when we do a rates and charges every year, and so they have a landing fee rate, we are not allowed to make any money off the airlines at the airport. It's net neutral. So when I say our non-airline revenue, that's the bulk of the money that we can run and operate with the airport. And it pays for our CIP, or our capital improvement program. So if it's airline revenue, that all has to be net neutral, and we can't make any money off of them. And so that's kind of how they fit into it. Right now we have a year-to-year lease with them. We're looking at changing that and actually getting into, we had a 15-year lease with them. Now we're on a year-to-year, which is fine. It doesn't really impact us too much. So. Do we have that option to say no? Would you guys want us to say no? Don't bring another airline in. Don't get me that direct flight to Paris. No, I don't have that ability. I was on maternity leave, and Frontier announced 20 new nonstops, and I'm at home going, are you kidding me? Where am I going to put these flights? So it's really figuring out. One of the things we did, which Southwest has a huge issue with, and I'm sure y'all will know this, is when you load to board a Southwest flight, you stand up by the stanchions that they have there, right? Other airlines don't do that. So what we did with our gates was, instead of making them preferential, which is Southwest, you get this gate, and Delta, you get this gate, we now have common use gates. And so Southwest, while the bigger airlines do keep most of their gates, they have the ability to use other gates when other airlines aren't using them. So that helped us, because our big thing is turns per gate. And that is, how many turns can I put on a gate with how many planes I have coming in on that gate every day. So the average is about 5.2 turns. We get about 9 turns a day on our gates because we are at capacity with everything. Southwest can turn about 13 turns a day on a gate. So yeah, so it's just, it's really trying to find that flexibility in the infrastructure that we have and putting that flexibility in that allows us to really move those things around so that we can make things more efficient. Yes?
With the slide with the, so like light rail, line half line, and like,
Yeah.
can you like explain?
Sure. So when we were going through the master plan, we thought alignment, I don't remember which one it is, the alignment that went under the end of the runway was not a good idea. I think, maybe, I don't remember where it was now. I just added these. Oh no, it's before all this. Yeah, so it's Cap Metro, and it's just like, that's all of our property. And so it's like, when they come into our site, how do we get them to the terminal? So in Project Connect, they had it going and boring underneath the end of the runway. So you can kind of actually see it on here, the 16. They had this line where they would bore and tunnel it underneath the end of the runway. Well, no, I know, we have a high water table. We have springs over in that area too, and so it wasn't a good idea. So when we were going through it, we said, okay, we think you're actually going to go along 71. We don't think you're going to spend all that money to tunnel under the end of the runway, and we don't really want you to do that. And so we added this secondary alignment just in case, and now they've come back to us, and because we're really digging into alignment with them right now and utilities, and it looks like they're going to go along 71. So we're glad we put it on here. The reason why we had to put it on here was because the ALP gets approved by FAA. So the airport master plan gets sent to the FAA for approval, and that's what your grant funding is based off of. So if I would have shifted it and not put that on there, and then Cap Metro came in and said, I want to build along 71, they would be like, oh, you got to resubmit your whole ALP again and do your forecast again and do all this. So it was almost like, let's just put both of them on there just in case so that we don't have to redo this effort again. Yes?
Can you talk about international flight expansion? We call it international airport. We only go to Mexico City for Frankfurt and London. So that we talk about in the future. Are we gonna implement international flight?
Sure. So we fly to Canada too. So there's one more. Yeah. So we've been fighting for an Asia flight for a long time. We're just not quite there yet. So I work really closely with the chamber to provide them our planning numbers and our growth and our data so that they can take that. They also work with the businesses, the large businesses, so Samsung coming in and Apple and Facebook and Google, and understanding what their needs are and how many people can they commit to being on that Asia flight every day. So that's what we did with BA when British Airways came in. We made that and said, are people going to fly from Austin to London, or are they okay flying Austin to Dallas to London? Austin to Houston to London? Is it that much more where we're going to be able to stock that entire plane full of people every single day? And so that's where that comes in. We're not quite there yet with the Asia flight, and we probably don't think that'll happen for another 3 years maybe.
So the biggest problem is to convince the airline.
Correct.
To have the market.
Yes, and you're not just I'm not fighting with San Antonio for that Asia flight. I'm fighting with Tokyo, actually, to Seoul. I'm fighting with JFK on that flight. So I'm fighting with we're not even in the region. But they have one plane. That airline has one plane to put into the market. Where are they going to make the most money in that market? And so that's what they're looking at, and that's what we have to fight for. Yes?
Next up, a recent study on high-speed rail.
Yes.
And this I-35 the alignment shows that the Austin station is looking very close or right by the airport. Any discussion?
No, they haven't talked to us about that. I've had discussions about the Hyperloop coming to the airport. I've had discussions about Uber Elevate coming to the airport, but I haven't heard that one. Yes.
Could you talk about what makes up your revenue on hand, and what role do all of the vendors
Sure.
who are in the airport play? About how much of your budget, I guess your revenue comes from those vendors, and then relatedly, could you tell us what's happened with parking? You said about 60% of your revenue has come from parking,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that airports have really been
Mm-hmm.
feeling some slack in the demand for parking with TNCs. So how has that affected you recently?
So our operating budget is about $90 million a year. We typically get in about 110 to 120 million every year. The net, or the, over what our operating is, that's what we use to fund these capital projects. Of that 90 million operating, I don't know what the percentage really is that is net neutral with the airlines. All of the tenants pay rent. It's at minimum based off square footage and sales. So they have to meet a targeted number at the end of the year for sales, and then we get a percentage of that sales. That's the concessions. That's the the retail and the restaurant side of things. When it comes to like the GA folks on the south side, we get landing fees from them. They're not considered a commercial aircraft, and so we do get revenue off of them. And they pay leased space down on the south side as well. From a parking standpoint, I think when we were looking at it, DFW's change has been about 21%. When we were talking to them, ours isn't nearly that high. So people are still parking at the airport. I think DFW's a little different because they got the yellow line going out there now too. And so, yes, does high-speed transit from downtown play a role into the parking revenue? Yeah, it will. And how are we going to recoup some of that? So is that a deal we're making with Cap Metro? You're ending the line on our property. We're getting a percentage of the ticket. Those are all things we're going to have to work out with them. But from our standpoint, I want to say that our change is maybe in 15% right now. And that's more, it's more on the rental car side than the parking side. So a lot of people that are coming to Austin are typically coming for business. They used to rent a car. Now they're taking a TNC. So on average, I get about $40 on a rental car for a 5-day rental. On a TNC, I get $2 for pickup and $2 for drop off. So that's definitely a big difference in revenue for us. So, yes.
I just want to follow up the expansion question. There's a lot of regional hubs different companies, very fast American. So are we competing with other cities that the airline come here and say, hey, that's Austin, this is a regional hub or frontier or something?
So Austin is an origin destination airport. People come to Austin, or they leave to go somewhere else. But people aren't commuting through Austin. We're too far south, and you've got Houston and Dallas so close by that are hubs. That's not to say that out of the legacy carriers, Delta's the only one in Texas that does not have a hub in Texas. And so they have released that we're going to be a focus city. So I think Delta's trying to get away from the hub word, but they know that the Austin has a market where we can grow. And we don't just have one dominant carrier, so they're not making all the decisions, which is the other big thing on why we really like being able to handle those low-cost carriers all the way up to the legacy carriers, because it's an even branch when people come in or when the airlines come in and say, well, I want you to do this. Well, I have all the other guys saying, no, I don't want you to do that. we don't have a dominant carrier. So while Southwest is like 36%, the rest of them make up more than 36%. So like with Charlotte, 92% is American. American runs that airport. They ask for something and everybody bows down and says sure. So we don't have to deal with that, which is nice. And it also keeps the ticket prices competitive between the airlines. Whereas in Charlotte, if you don't fly American, your ticket's through the roof. So, yes.
I'm just wondering if you had any sense of the share of passengers and share of air travel. If this goes one way back and forth to Dallas, one way back and forth to Houston.
We don't. That was a big thing we were trying to figure out in the master plan, but without really, because you don't know if somebody's connecting. And so that's where, and the airlines don't want to give you any of their information. They, from a forecasting standpoint, when I sat down and met with all the airlines, I'm like, this is a 20-year plan. And I got the next 6 months out of them. That's it. And so it's really hard to forecast when you can't even get that information out of them.
The reason I ask is that air travel obviously has a pretty high impact on climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that people are talking about, certainly for these shorter distance direct flights, substituting high-speed rail.
Yeah, they're talking about that and Hyperloop. So that's been a big discussion of they're doing it at Heathrow, where they're going to Hyperloop Heathrow and Gatwick. Well, if you can Hyperloop them and it takes you 5 minutes in a Hyperloop, that's really like walking to the next terminal. So at Heathrow, it's going to cost them over $50 million to build their next runway, which is crazy. Runways aren't that expensive. They just take up a lot of real estate. So they're like, I can't afford that. So how does London grow? They're trying to figure out a different way, and that's to connect the two airports together and grow Gatwick and then Hyperloop between them. We don't really know how Uber Elevate's going to roll into this either. I mean, they're building an Uber Elevate on the parking garage in Dallas right now, so I guess it's definitely coming. We just don't know when that's going to happen, but that's a significant impact for those shorter distance. Correct. Mostly because they're spending all their money on this. But it is, and it's not just them. Other people are looking at it, but it's like a drone, but it holds a person. So you get in a drone and you fly and you land. And so it's instead of they're vertical airplanes, more or less, where they're taking off vertically like a helicopter and going and landing. But you can put these landing pads on the top of parking garages, and so, or on top of these buildings. And so you'll be able to interconnect places in your city that maybe your roadway network couldn't connect. So Cap Metro can do all these spokes they want to, but unless you put a circle in to really connect the entire city, who else is going to do that? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sure.
I wonder if you could say something about how the airport relates with its surrounding land uses.
Oh, yes. I didn't even hit on that. My apologies. So I actually review all of the land use reviews that come in that are within 2 miles of the airport. So we have zoning regulations in this Austin City Code for different overlay zones. So we have the AO 1, 2, and 3. The AO2 is really what our 65 decibel noise line is and that's where FAA says it's too loud, people shouldn't live there. So they want you to put these zoning regulations into place so that you don't have residential or schools, not higher education, but elementary, middle school, high schools, within those zones. And so the other thing we look at too is height limitations on buildings. Obviously that would be bad. And then standing water. So I really don't want anybody to put a water park in within the landing area because water attracts birds. birds and planes don't work well together. So yeah, so we do a lot with the land use reviews, and I review all of those that are within a 2-mile radius, which is, we probably get 2 a week right now. It's definitely starting to grow out there. Land's cheap, so. But we have things in the ordinance that really help us. Yes.
Yeah, I had a question about the, public-private partnership.
Yeah.
It's not obvious to me from the perspective of the airport, what the sort of net revenue benefit is.
I didn't have to build it.
You have to build it.
Yeah.
They get basically all the revenue from it.
They get the revenue from parking. So all the parking that's down at the South Terminal is their revenue. They get revenue off the concessions inside. They don't get anything from TSA. We maintain TSA down there. TSA doesn't want a relationship with a third party. They only want it with the airport. Airlines are the same way. They don't pay us. It's just that relationship. But when they want to install new equipment down there, they go through us. They don't go through the South Terminal. And then we have to do that coordination. The concessions, the landing fees we get, they're landing on our pavement. So that's about it.
Obviously, you did the cost.
We did the biggest thing.
Why you would have made more money if you just built an internal?
So we looked at that. We were going to build it in the beginning. We actually came up with a set of plans. The building was there. It was actually a terminal in 2008. And I can't remember who was flying out of there. Aeromexico? No, that's not right. Viva, that's it. And they were there for like 6 months, and then the downturn hit. They went away. So it was this horrible neon green building down there for a long time. And we were just going to gut it, do very minimal work to get Allegiant in. And when we really started looking at how much it was going to cost us to do it and the time that it takes for the city to do business with other city departments, it ended up being, hey, if y'all can do this in a quicker time period, let's do it. It would have taken us probably 2 years to build out that building. It took them 11 months. So they just don't have to do and follow all the rules like we do. So a lot more rules for us. Yes?
I'm wondering with all the new construction and development, if you're going to be implementing sustainable building.
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. So all new city buildings for any city department have to be LEED Silver or better. So if I build that new concourse, it's going to be LEED Silver or better. Even with some of our tenant stuff, we push them to do it as well, but they're not required to actually go get the certification for it. So the cell phone lot that was built, that was actually a P3. So that was a public-private partnership. We don't own or maintain that. We lease that land to them, but they followed the LEED requirements, but didn't get it certified. But yeah, I mean, any new building, the maintenance complex, the new parking garage that I mentioned, we actually put solar power on the entire top of the parking garage. At first, we were only going to do a third of the garage, and that was due, it's kind of a perception thing, and I hate to say that, but we're running a business. So the third of the garage we were going to do would power the administration building that's attached to it. With the rate structure Austin Energy had in place for commercial electricity and selling back to the grid, it didn't make sense from a business perspective to put solar power on the entire top of the garage, even though from a perception standpoint, it would be like, this is a great idea. Why wouldn't you guys do this? So we worked with Austin Energy. They changed their rate structure. And so Austin Energy actually took the lead, and they're the ones building the solar power on the entire top of the garage. So it's going to power our admin building, and then the other 2/3 is going to go back onto their network and can power about 150 homes. The entire airport is actually, we buy wind power, so it's technically all wind powered. And that's one big thing. So we do pay a little bit more than the regular rate for that wind power. We were the first airport as well to do, we're carbon neutral on the airfield at the gates. And so when a plane comes up or you get in it and you're like, oh my God, it's so hot in here, right? We have this huge yellow tube we hook up to the plane, and they pull air from our building to air condition the plane instead of sitting it and letting it idle. So we have a very extensive environmental program at the airport, and we're very passionate about all of that. So it's really exciting. We started composting in the airport, and it's been an interesting thing to deal with. So you can imagine when you don't have those facilities before. But yes.
Some cities, European countries have this concept of like making the airport not just a transportation facility, but like an airport city.
Mm-hmm.
Many other functions integrate with the airport, giving the anticipated future growth of passenger volume over the city.
Uh-huh.
Any ideas like integrate development between the land around the airport and the airport facility?
Yeah, so that's what we've looked at, and I should have probably tacked that onto your question about the revenue for the parking. So one of the things we are doing is developing the land in a different way. And so instead of relying on parking, we're going, oh, we got to get our act together and find different modes of revenue. So that's why we did the cell phone lot. So Denver had one similar, but it was really just a gas station. We were the first one to put in more of a neighborhood center. So Del Valley's in a food desert. And so it was really something near and dear to our hearts because they're our neighbors and a lot of our employees live there, to provide an area where there's a restaurant. There will be multiple restaurants. There's 3 open right now with Austin Java, Subway, and Taco Mama. And so there's 2 more spaces in there. And then the gas station. Around that, we have the opportunity for building more retail, some office space, and a 3rd hotel is what we're looking at. And those are all public-private partnerships. So when we talked about relocating 71, we own all the land that's shown in pink on the north side of 71 or red. But the stuff that's shown in purple is what we need to realign 71. And that way we can really redo the corridor along there and provide uses that are still compatible with the airport. So no residential and no schools, but be able to make revenue off leasing that land out to folks. So those are the things we're looking at. Charlotte's doing a really good job with that right now. They just buy land like nonstop everywhere around the airport. They buy. And they've leased out warehouses and all kinds of crazy things. So up in the very top corner up there, we have quite a bit of land up there that's can't touch the runway. It's not really aviation use. And that's an area too we've looked at to redevelop into warehousing or something like that, where it's still a compatible land use with the noise issue. Yes?
This is one of the higher level questions. So instead of Texas, DFW and Houston is a major impact.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's just a market force, or we have some tax break or policy preference from the state or the city that won't become a major?
They're a hub for an airline. That's it. So Southwest is at Hobby, American's at DFW, and United is at Houston. So yesterday, Houston decided to shut down. I had 61 planes headed to Austin between 4 o'clock yesterday and 1 o'clock today that were landing and taking passengers off planes because they can't get to Houston because they're flooded out right now. So that's always an exciting time to deal with on top of our regular people. So hopefully nobody's flying out today because it's a mess. But that's it, is, and they're all United because they're a hub. They have the market. When I was talking about 92% in Charlotte is American, that's it. That's why Charlotte is so big. I mean, city size-wise, we're very comparable to them. But their airport is 11th in the United States, and we're 33rd right now.
This sounds like you want to be headed there then.
Do you want to be a hub? Does it benefit you? Those people aren't coming in and spending money in Austin. They're just sitting in your airport, connecting and going to another city. So they're building a whole bunch of infrastructure to support these connecting flights, but they're not supporting Austin. So it's kind of it's up for a debate. Do you want that in your community or not? Yeah. Yeah, thank y'all. That was fun.
Before you leave, you can
Sure.
mention your intern program.
Oh, yes. So we have a pretty extensive intern program out at the airport. I have 2 interns that report directly to me. One is at Texas State and the other is at ACC. And so we do summer interns where, if you just want to do it for the summer, we probably have 3 or 4 that we do just for the summer. And then we have 2 that we keep on year round. And it's a lot of research. We definitely get you guys involved, and I think it's really cool. We've hired, one of our interns started at ACC. We hired him on as an actual intern because he got credit for it. And then he's now a full-time employee with us and wants to be an airport planner. So it's really exciting. And he's going to school online at Indiana State, and he just got accepted to a master's program at Purdue online. So it's pretty cool. There's a website on the airport that talks about internships, but let me go to the end. If y'all want my contact information, or you can reach out and just send me your resume if you have any interest in doing it, and we'll get you guys on board. So we love to use you guys to do our research for us. So yeah, thank you. I forgot about that.